of others, strength to seek what we believe in, humility to accept the combined decisions of others, patience, particularly good humour at all times, tolerance and courtesy while working in the best interests of our wonderful community. Morning to you all, and it's great to see you. Pleased the rain is not here. It's decided that yesterday was enough.
Wellington had a rough day.
Now, I guess there'll be some apologies for lateness. Right, apologies. We have got Councillor Chris, who is overseas, Councillors Denise and Sharon for lateness. There's Councillor Mike, excellent timing.
They're on council business in Orewa.
Yep, that's good.
Walking the tsunami.
This is, yep, excellent. Right, anyone else? Right, I'll move those things variously. Councillor Cathy, you're second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It gets passed. Confirmation of the minutes. Declarations of interest, none. Anyone got any declarations of interest? Confirmation of the minutes. I'll confirm those of Thursday the 28th of April, Friday the 13th of May. It's true and correct record. Councillor Bill will second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
It gets passed. We have got acknowledgements and achievements. I have got 2 acknowledgements. So I will reflect on Chris and Penina first, and then I'll ask us all to stand as a sign of respect. I'm going to acknowledge this morning the passing of Chris Parkinson and Penina Latu. Chris was an award-winning broadcaster, radio pioneer and Radio Hauraki co-founder. He died at the end of last month, just days before his 75th birthday. He was a stalwart of New Zealand radio, one of the original Radio Hauraki pirates, and he and his mates David Gapes, Dennis O'Callaghan and Derek Locro changed this country's airways forever. Chris began his career as a studio technician at the NZBC, but it wasn't long before his fantastic radio voice was in high demand. He went on to be the corporate voice of several radio stations, was the voice which introduced TVNZ's news presenters during the 90s, and worked with his pirate colleague Derek Lowe at Radio Pacific. It was in the 60s, though, that Chris and his colleagues achieved fame when Hauraki pilots smashed this country's broadcast stranglehold before their boat, the Tiri, was smashed on Great Barrier Island rocks in January 1968. The foursome had taken to international waters between Great Barrier and Coromandel Peninsula to break the NZBC's broadcast monopoly and the law. Private broadcasting licences were later allowed, and Radio Hauraki was one of the first to get one. At least one documentary and a movie were made to tell the fearsome foursome story, and Radio Hauraki celebrates its 50th anniversary in December this year. Secondly, I want to acknowledge Penina Latu. Penina died in hospital after a short illness at the very young age of 18. She was a recipient of the Auckland Communities Foundation Mary's Scholarship at the end of 2015, and she will be remembered for the way she served diligently in her community. She contributed to a wide variety of activities at Kelston Girls College and was on a number of school communities, including the Academic Committee, Health and Wellbeing Committee, Enterprise Committee, Arts Committee, Human Rights Committee, and Environmental Committee. She was school prefect, librarian, co-leader of the Christian group and a peer supporter. Activities outside of school included being a part of her church choir, youth group, and a Tongan cultural group. Her strong leadership attributes and academic credibility stood out to First Foundation and her sponsor partner, the Mary's Fund. Our love and thoughts are with the Latu family, Kelston Girls College, and the wider community. Councillors and members of our team, would you stand?
Mr. Mayor, can I just, as we stand to acknowledge those people, I'd like us also to acknowledge your father. If you weren't the mayor and in this position, your father, Tom Brown, would have been acknowledged as an educationalist, as a principal, and as a much loved and respected member of the community of the South. And I think we should stand and acknowledge your father as we acknowledge those other two. extraordinary people. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Dick.
I thank Councillor Holst for raising the issue of the passing of your father, and I just hope that that will be included in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Quax. I'm sure it will be. Councillors, as we head in towards the end of this term, there are some great things that are happening in our city. And if you just read through the achievements / acknowledgements of civic activity for May, the Tripartite Economic Summit, to those of you who went, and particularly at the dinner and hosted tables, thank you. It was really an amazing evening, but an amazing event. We've been roundly appreciated in the very best of terms by the Mayor of Los Angeles, the Vice Mayor of Guangzhou, all of those who were there, our 400 businesses who registered, and we are already seeing very clear outcomes that will be reported to you on a week-by-week basis. So a real stunning achievement. And beside that, quietly happening was the inaugural Tech Week. And Tech Week basically was about recognising the activity in the New Zealand, in the Auckland tech market. And as a part of that, there was one thing called Magnify, an event called Magnify. Now, Magnify was about virtual reality. And you might not know, and you should, virtual reality is a very, very big part of Auckland's tech development. And 1,300 people registered for the Magnify event. And it's that good that it is going to be taken around the world. So it's been taken up as an event that we can lead globally. So very, very exciting. Big ups to Brett O'Reilly and the Global Partnerships team led by Holly Warren. To you, Chief Executive Officer, the team were outstanding through that whole week. Maunga Kēkea will host a special little occasion on the 11th of June. Encourage you to be there if you can. It'll be earlyish at 7:30. We are going to replant the tree on top of the hill. Well, one or two of them, but welcome you all to be up there. Just want to acknowledge the Job Fest. So we had 3,500 young people turn up at the Job Fest at the Cloud. Look, coming straight out of that, kids have got jobs already. The last Job Fest, we had 400 jobs for our young people. For the 3,500 who went to that one, I expect the same numbers out of this. So encourage you to look through those achievements. So much going on in the city at the moment that is to be proud of. Petitions, none of those. Public input, not today, and you'll recognise that we have a change to our agenda, Council, just to deal with one or two of those things. Skypath, so I wasn't at the briefing yesterday, but I understand there were issues concerned and raised in terms of how we would procedurally deal with that. So we'll deal with Skypath next month, and I trust we'll be able to deal with that in the appropriate fashion on that occasion. So the public input will not be today. You can take it out of your agendas, item 11 and item C1. I want to flip things around a little bit because we have the representatives of the Auditor General's office present here this morning to talk to item 14, which relates to housing for the elderly partnerships. And because we always love to look to accommodate the office of the Auditor General, we would like to move this up to the next item for consideration. So item 14 will become item 11. Okay, so no public input, no local board input, extraordinary business notice and motions. We'll move now to item 14. And we got Maddie. Good. David Rankin, Robert Irvine, and Kat, represented from the Auditor General's office. Excellent. Right. No, right. Where's the... Just want to sit back there? Right, David. This is Kath. Right. Matthew, will you lead this up?
Yes, happy to, Your Worship.
Right, okay, so we have a report, councillors, and I think we ought to just have a quick, any further comment from you, Matthew?
Yep, Your Worship, councillors, just a quick run through, and with Kat here, I would quite like just to finish off with Kat giving a sense of the consultation process through June. But just a quick recap, purpose today is simply to enable you to adopt the consultation material so that we can get on with the next stage, which is the formal consultation with the community around the proposal for council to deliver housing for elderly services in a slightly different way. And that all just follows the pretty extensive conversations you've held through the Development Committee and with Panuku and the discussions with Selwyn Foundation. So perhaps key points this morning, and I think you may be receiving at the moment a draft audit opinion. Following adoption today, that'll be signed by the Auditor General, and we will be good to go in terms of complying with legislative requirements and getting formal consultation underway. Pretty extensive documentation attached to the agenda item. That's all been worked through Council's legal team and audit to both of their satisfaction. So it's a clean audit opinion that you're seeing in front of you. And if you do have questions of audit, we have Joe Smale, our audit director, here with us today. What else can we mention here? Look, I think if I just move on, and it's probably recalling next steps really. This is all about needing to amend the LTP. That was always going to be a necessary step in the process. So today is necessary to adopt the consultation material. We would then go into formal consultation in June, come back in July, so your July decision point is a yes/no in terms of amending the LTP, and then underneath of that and leading into August, that would enable, assuming you do adopt your LTP in line with the proposal or even slight amendments to that proposal, Panuku would bring through final advice in August, so bringing it through to this administration pre-election in terms of the crux of the proposed partnership arrangements with Selwyn. So, look, I think I'll stop there. There are really, the documentation in front of you is completely consistent with the material we worked through in the workshop in late April. And I might just ask Kat just to give a quick rundown on what's planned for June.
Kat.
Certainly. The consultation document will be available as usual through local board offices, libraries and service centres, and also through Shape Auckland as general consultation. As we know, our tenants both now and in the future are a special group who require specific consultation. We have worked very closely with our tenant reference group, a representative group of tenants, to work through how we'll consult with them. We are running 10 information sessions across the city, which are less formal drop-in sessions. They are have your say sessions, but we'll be working with tenants. We've simplified the document. We've got some large print copies, and there'll be one-on-one conversations where tenants will be able to ask questions, get information, and then either feedback to us, or we can support people to fill in the forms either online or handwritten. We're also working with the sector reference group, which is made up of representatives from the seniors panel, age concerned, grey power and the community housing sector, to engage with them to get feedback from those sector groups who represent the interests of both social housing and also the aged advocacy sector across Auckland.
Very good. Okay, right. Now, Councillor Cathy.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this partnership. I think it's going to be really good for everybody. My questions relate to the change in the housing action plan from at least maintain to increase. And I see that there's various sentences been included in the consultation document, but I'm concerned about one that I'm reading on page 61. It's our page 61, and it's the development of the portfolio, and it says, the number of housing for older people units will be maintained. Now, that is not what was in our former policy. It was at least be maintained. So I need that corrected, because that's not, we are signalling that, we have signalled always that we are interested in increasing. So that's a change to a former housing action plan policy.
So through the chair, so I think we're getting down to words, which is fair enough, and I've heard a request for the inclusion of at least.
Yep.
And I know we've had some discussion around this, and I think the resolutions enable, I can't recall, but enables one or two people to look after a few editorial tidy-ups, and I think that if that one meets with legal and audit satisfaction, we'd be happy to include that.
At least I'm comfortable with that. It doesn't really, sort of add or detract too much from it, so at least is probably a little bit more directive than just the same. My hope and expectation here is that what we finally conclude delivers with the partner, that we get the opportunity of building more. It's just that we're not doing the building. We want to see it done by the partner. So if it delivers more, then that's bloody marvellous. Right, any other comments, councillors? Councillor Bill and then Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Kat, just to you, you've had engagement with our tenants, our clients. Has that been one-to-one? Because the last thing we want to do is when they read the words refurbish, sell, shift, change, new, to give them any concern or worries or angst. So has there been one-on-one verbal or written communication to each of our clients, giving them some certainty and security going forward?
Through the chair, we're working with our tenants reference group, which is elected representatives of across the tenant groups, and we've also had a tenant newsletter which has been self-created, and we've worked with that group to make sure that every step of the partnership has gone through that newsletter and been delivered. We also have staff that are on the ground, our social housing coordinators, who are fully briefed across the project and have been answering and keeping questions, keeping the tenants informed of the process.
Is there a level of comfort amongst our clients out there around this proposal?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
The tenants are very interested in this proposal.
I can understand that. Thank you.
Right, batting line up, I'll get Councillor Mike and then Councillor Linda. So Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is quite a significant step and needs to be undertaken with due consideration and care. I note that the council currently owns 1,412 units. It's not clear how many of these units are currently out of commission, been out of commission for some time. However, a partnership is being explored, to use the word in the report. I think it's a little bit more definite than that, and what I'm concerned about is that if we're going to public consultation, there needs to be a proper process. Mr Mayor, I have to say, after attending quite a lot of have your say meetings, I found them really quite unsatisfactory as a public consultation process. The information was highly controlled and the meetings were choreographed really. I would much prefer, if we're going into formal consultation, we went back to the way governments and local governments normally formally consult with proper hearings. And I think that is the best way to deal with this form of consultation in regard to such a serious matter. I am concerned that in some ways we are following Mr English's example, and in essence this is the first step to privatising that housing stock, which I do not believe is a good thing. However, I will keep an open mind, but I would ask that the council, when it consults on the alienation of strategic assets does so in a formal way, and have your say events are certainly not that. Thank you.
Right, councillor Linda.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I absolutely support this. I think that, in contrary to what's been just said, this can't be privatised, because the only way it can work if it is in partnership with community housing providers, because that's where we get the government funding.
I haven't opposed that.
Of which the whole project can't work. So if it went to private people, they couldn't get that. So I think this is the whole issue here is that partnership, and I think that makes a huge difference, that we're going to really lift the level of people's quality of life with these, a lot of rebuilding and refurbishing. I'm very pleased to see in E that we're going to have your say events locally. I think that is much better for people to be in their own space, in their own home territory, I hope, where they feel comfortable. And Councillor Hulse and myself did this in Waitakere when we were looking at the same kind of process before amalgamation, where it got stalled. And what we found was that the formal hearing process was very intimidating. It felt staged and choreographed, whereas when you're meeting with people in their little, in their community rooms or a local community hall, and you've got cups of tea, and they can really engage with you. And I'm very pleased to see that you've got elected members involved here, because we will be making the decision, and we need to own that responsibility and front up to our older adult tenants. It's really important that they get the chance to say what they want to say to us, be it good or bad, and I'm very pleased to see that, and I'd be very happy to be involved, Mr Chairman.
Very good. Councillor Cal.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, and mine's probably a couple of things and points have been already clarified, and that's what Councillor Cashmore raised, because I do have some concern that often we don't really get to some of those tenants and advise them. I'm saying that though, some do get a wee bit confused, and I'm aware of that. But I take a contrary view to Councillor Lee's opinion in regards to the have your says. I know you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink, but I have to say that all the have your says I've been to, we had a fair and frank discussion at the tables, and open and transparent, and actually I welcomed that, as opposed to the old way we did our hearings. So every table I sat at, it was a robust and meaningful discussion. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? Councillor Penn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the critical nature here is that we are dealing with, exactly as Councillor Cooper said, we're dealing with some of our members of our community who are pretty vulnerable and can be quite vulnerable to bad politics and untrue.
Sure.
Well, coming from a councillor who never
Karen,
sold
come on.
their housing, I feel very proud of that. Not subject to bad politics out west. So the reality is that our members of these villages that we still own do not need to be frightened by words like alienation of council assets. We are not selling their homes. We're actually improving their lives and making those villages better. And if we can't sit around the table with them in their place and in their homes and in their community halls to have an honest conversation, we're going to end up with a whole lot of our vulnerable members of our community frightened by media and frightened by bad politics. So I absolutely support, and Kat, to you and your team who have these good relationships with all of our people who live in our older adult villages, I think you need to help our community lead the right process for them and not drag them into the town hall for formal sittings, which for most of our community are not only unfriendly but undoable. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I think we've had good say. Councillor Mike, you've had your say.
Mayor, could we, in light of discussion, could we, in regard to these consultations, which are not really going to be formal, it seems, could we have members and the Have Your Say meetings, given the advice, the ruling from the High Court, or Court of Appeal, sorry, what consultation really means legally? And that is a willingness to listen to other opinions and not make predetermined decisions as we seem to be doing here. Thank you.
Takes one to know one.
Okay, right, well, that's a useful
Just
piece
leave
of
them in their grotty
advice.
flats then,
Now,
shall
order please. I think we're pretty much done with the discussion. Now, do we need to hear from the Office of the Auditor General? You've given us tick off. Are you delighted with what we're doing here?
I have no view on what you're doing.
Ah, wonderful. An excellent reply.
Haere mai, we can't hear you.
And would you just come in here, because I mean you've come all the way here and blah blah. So why don't we just yeah. Here you go.
Sorry, I wasn't planning on fronting. I was just trying to see whether it went through. So the document meets our requirements, and we will be issuing the opinion that you have been provided with.
Yep.
So as long as it gets passed through here, we're all good from our perspective to go.
Very good. Okay. Right. Well, I think that sort of dots the I's, cross the T's. Then I'll move that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? I'm second. Councillor Kathy, do you want to second this? Yep. Right. Very good. Right. That's done. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to...
Mr Mayor, could my vote be recorded against?
Absolutely. We're very happy to do
Can't
that,
come to
Michael.
any openings.
Jose, thank you for coming along, and pass on our regards to Lynn. Right, move on to item 11, isn't it?
12.
12, that's right, we took out item 11. Go back to item 12. Okay, now we would have Uncle Phil. Proposed response to Local Government Commission request for alternative application in relation to the NAG organisational proposal. Councillors, this is a report, recommendations relating to North Rodney's representation, their desire to try and secede. So, Phil, do you want to just give us a little bit of backup to this?
Your Worship, this is pretty straightforward stuff. The report both updates you but does ask for a decision around whether council would submit formally to the Local Government Commission with an alternate proposal. It suggests not on the basis that the Local Government Commission does not see that opportunity as a chance to advocate for status quo. Okay, so the only reason we would do that is if we had an entirely different view of governance arrangements in North Rodney.
Yep, right. Councillor Penny?
Mr Chairman, I'll move the recommendations, but I've got an amendment up there in C. I
Right.
think the whole process, this whole process is quite unfortunate in that it doesn't allow the wider public in any area, but in Rodney in particular, to actually have a say about what they think. The fact that submissions say that they don't want the status quo doesn't give people the ability to actually say, we don't agree with NAG, and we want to stay with Auckland, but we're actually not very happy with some of what's happening in our area since we joined the Super City. So I think and I know that many people feel that way, I think my extra C there asks the Chief Executive to talk to the Local Government Commission with the difficulty with this process to ascertain the views of the wider Rodney community about the process. It's NAG or nothing. You know, there hasn't been an opportunity for people who don't support NAG to actually come out and say that.
Yeah.
Right through this whole process, there's been nothing. There's no news media, there's no ability. You go to meetings and someone stands up at the back at the ratepayers meetings and says, maybe we should support NAG, and everybody in the room goes, oh, you know, and I've been to all these meetings. So there's just no ability for the majority of the people to actually have their say. So I would like to see that informed to the Local Government Commission, please.
Yep, not an unreasonable request. I think what we are trying to do here, councillors, because I think it's pretty clear Local Government Commission would like to have said no to this, but the issue is that they are constrained within the law, and the government will be the first to say that they have a piece of legislation here that probably didn't reflect their intentions. I would have thought that the smartest thing to do as a general comment in establishing the Auckland Super City is to give it a 3-term period of grace to actually get itself settled and balanced, and then make some reasonable judgments as to its workability or not, for all or some. And then of course there are other issues that I know what a gardener is quite keen on looking at is how can you amend possibly the local board structure to give a wider ambit to the rural and island wards in particular, where we have got the challenges at the moment, one in Waiheke and one in North Rodney. So look, I think that the one thing that Witta has said to me is, look, this is going to be a long process. It's going to take a while, and so I think the most useful thing at this point in time is just keep breathing and allow them to do what they need to do, and then enable the process and the next council and maybe the council after that and after that to do something about this. And I suspect the government is also eyeing up the possibility of 1 or 2 changes around our super city structure to deal with, you know, the integrity of what has been set up by the will of Parliament. Okay, now I think I've got Councillor. Now, can we just have a range of? I had Councillor Wayne first, then Councillor George, then Councillor Kathy, and then Councillor John. Right, Councillor Wayne.
First of all, I've just got a question around C, where it mentions, I think, the Rodney community. We need a little bit of definition there. Are we talking about legacy Rodney, which included the Hibiscus Coast? Are we talking the current Rodney Local Board? Just what do we mean by Rodney?
Rodney Local Board.
Rodney Local Board. Okay, well in that case, I just suggest those words be added. Rodney Local Board. The other issue that concerns me is around information going forward, which is separate but related to this process. My understanding is that Rodney, and if we're talking Rodney Local Board, has been substantially better off over time in terms of reduction in rates, and that's not just rates based around capital value, lower sewage charges, lower water charges. I don't know what else. It would be very constructive to put some information together that's an information piece that could be on our website or the like, factually based, that just puts some material out there, because there's a lot of misinformation often. I'm an ex-Rodney councillor, so like Councillor Webster and Councillor Watson, we've got a relative degree of familiarity with the changes and the benefits and the disbenefits since the super city structure.
Yeah, look, I think that is a common concern for us all, Wayne, Councillor Wayne. I mean, I've sat in community meetings up there really over the last 6 years, and having said those same things on many occasions, and I'm sure all of you have, and certainly Councillor Penny does, the preparedness to actually accept that as fact, those assertions is something that's been a bit of a challenge in 1 or 2 of those communities. So, that is the very least that we've done thus far. We've actually provided that information to the Local Government Commission, and I see no reason why you know, some very, very clear black and white messages relating to what have been the changes really in the last 6 years there, Phil? Wouldn't be unfair?
And
We can certainly do that. We'll be guided by you about how proactive we
Yep.
are in promulgating it.
No, you don't need to be proactive, just get up on the website.
Sure, and just further to that, I mean, as an ex-Rodney councillor, the issues especially that we had were upgrading sewage systems and water supplies and dealing with coastal erosion issues and a variety of issues, frankly, that the Rodney District Council wasn't able to do.
Yeah, never had the rating base.
Because it didn't have the financial viability. And that circumstance has changed a great deal under the new city.
Yep. Helensville's the best example of that. So, very good, Wayne. Yeah, it's just the facts, and my view was that if the people really got the facts and understood it, particularly given the fact that we've been accused of, you know, sort of running down their financial contribution and the equity.
The opposite.
It's the opposite. You're absolutely right. So, Phil, I think we can be proactive there without being overly proactive.
Would you like a motion to that effect, Mr.
No,
Mayor? or-
I'm pretty sure that we can just do that, Wayne.
Thank you.
You have talked to Phil and Stephen and, you know, yourself, Penny, John, and just convey, just get it quite clear what we need to convey and by way of facts without getting up everyone's noses. Hey, piece of fine balance there. Councillor George, I've got something from you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have looked at this, and I believe that, and I'll put an amendment up.
I'm looking at it.
I believe that we should actually advise the Local Government Commission that they should look at the Royal Commission on Auckland Governance, which had quite an extensive expose of and conclusions and recommendations on how Auckland should be Auckland local government should be arranged, and that never came to pass in quite a large extent. And if I have a seconder, if you haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it.
Councillor, look, I'll indicate, Councillor George, just to help you out there. The Local Government Commission be requested to revisit the extensive recommendations of the Royal Commission on Auckland Governance in relation to the appropriate structure of local government in Auckland. Councillor George, quite frankly, that seems to me like you are suggesting that they completely revisit the whole thing. And I would not support that at all, and this is not the time to wind that particular argument up.
Exactly.
And if they don't know the Local Government Commission's, the Royal Commission's report and know it intimately well, then they'll waste time sitting where they are.
Okay, well, if you're not, if I haven't got that on the table, I still believe that we're only just going around the periphery if we are saying that we're going to have a governance centre of excellence, because there's fundamental flaws in the current system we've got between the governing body and the local boards. And, you know, we've had workshops on that, and, you know, I don't think people actually realise the frustration with the local boards, and it's actually going to get worse if it comes to pass and the budgets are actually slashed more in the future, as is being proposed with the elections coming up. So things are, I think that the Royal Commission did, on Auckland governance, did have a totally different approach to the organisation of local government. They had 6 councils. Councillors in those 6 councils were called councillors. They also had 2 elected Maori councillors on the governing body and 1 possibly appointed. So things were different. And, you know, I've been talking to local board members who are around in the council days, and they believe that the current situation is no different, and possibly in some cases is worse than what we had when we had community boards. So I think you know, we're only just trifling around the edges with this, and I think.
Stop. Look, Councillor George, what I want you to do is focus only on this. I don't want a broad-ranging discussion on the super city structure. Quite frankly, the Local Government Commission will not make any decisions about that.
Well, that's your view, Mr. Mayor.
Well, and I'm giving you my view. In the end, the government will be the one who will determine whether or not there should be any changes to the structure. We are required here solely to answer to the recommendation and proposal from NAC. Right? And so what I want us to do, rather than getting a broad range discussion today, because there will be plenty of opportunities for that, a broad range discussion today about the rights, wrongs or otherwise of the super city structure that is not perfect and will be changed either by us through policy or by the government through legislation, and particularly the relationship between boards and the governing body. And we know there's work to be done there. But Councillor George, that's not what this issue is about. It's specifically about an application by residents of North Rodney. Our Councillor Wayne has got it absolutely right in terms of focusing his attention precisely on the recommendation. And I do not want a wide-ranging rant about the rights and wrongs of the super city structure. That will wait for another day.
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, I think it was 12% satisfaction by the community.
13.
13% does say quite a lot, and if we're going to sit on our hands and just believe that everything's hunky-dory in the current situation that we're in, I don't think we're really being realists.
We're not sitting on our hands, Councillor George. We are working our butts off job. And there's not one person around this chamber who's not absolutely committed to what we are trying to do for the benefit of this city. And but the wider issue of structure is one that the government and us will deal with. Now, if you want to raise that as a specific issue, we're going to have a central government, local government forum, and I think one of the issues coming up in that, which is in about a few weeks' time, is the issue of structure and what we think after 6 years. And so, Councillor George, with the Minister of Local Government there and other senior ministers, that will be a brilliant opportunity for you to specifically raise this issue at that time.
Okay, right. Well, just finally, I'd just like to say that, you know, this Northern Action Group, I think they've got a few problems looming up if they are able to achieve what they're wanting, because I hope that we give the debt, their proportion of the debt goes with them if they do a seed from the Auckland Council. Yeah, so
there's a very old saying, George, that I think you're referring to there, and that's be very careful you get what you want.
Yeah, and I think Waihiki's the same. So.
Yeah. Okay, now we've got Councillor Cathy. I've got Councillor Cathy, Councillor John Watson, and then Councillor Mike.
And no disrespectful, but I think the recommendation B could be made a bit clearer in plain English. Function optimally means what? In the report, it sets out quite a few areas that we're looking at, and I wondered if those examples could be put into the resolution, because it clears up what we mean by function optimally.
I think the recommendation's a victory for efficiency over detail, perhaps, Councillor. We could add to it, but the essential point here is that the Local Government Commission is very interested in the work we're doing with the 5-6 year review of the governance framework and what fine-tuning might be agreed around this table as a consequence. That's what it's alluding to.
All right, if you weren't to use the words function optimally, what words would you use that makes it a bit clearer?
Optimally function.
Well.
To its best potential.
What I suggest, Councillor Cathy, is post this meeting, have a good talk with Phil, and make sure that those words are writ large in detail. All right, excellent. Councillor John Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And from memory, I think the quality of life surveys that used to go out to a number of the councils, Rodney included, I think the confidence in the council's decision making, that was Rodney's, used to hover around about the 20% mark, and from my recollection, it was actually on a downward trajectory. So
Absolutely.
each council that came in, it dropped down. So I guess I'd make the simple point then that in this area and wider, Rodney, too, that degree of dissatisfaction has been quite long-standing. And I guess predates the Auckland Council. But nonetheless, I was glad to hear your reference in passing there to the need to do a comprehensive review of the super city. It's been 6 years, 9 years, getting up to a decade. You would hope the government would lead out on that, because I think it is needed. I think we do need to get a sense of what the various parts of Auckland think of how things have gone. Otherwise, you wonder why you make such a significant structural change and there's no actually looking back and seeing how things are going. And if you don't do that, of course, you can't improve, can you?
No, that's right.
And I just reiterate Councillor Casey's point there in terms of the second recommendation B, that, it'd be nice if, it's probably not going to happen, but if there was a little bit of explicit detail, because basically if you read that, it is very jargonised. There's no real sense of anything specific that could come out of that other than, they're working at things. So that's a concern if we were really looking to signal some significant change. And that's certainly something that's coming up a lot more regularly now. So if you're going to meetings, you're getting a lot more questions about, delegated authority to local boards, why aren't, local boards having more say, etc., etc. So I don't think that's going to really allay anyone's concerns. So it'd be nice if there is something specific that is at least out there in some form, albeit not in this resolution, but in general communication.
So I offer you the same encouragement post-meeting. Sit with Phil and make sure that the degree of detail that fleshes out those words are there, John. And look, particularly for the three of you who are former members of the Rodney County Council.
District Council.
District Council, sorry about that. District Council, and now members of this chamber. I think it would be very helpful for you to have your say in that matter. So I'm sure Phil is looking forward to that input. Councillor Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very interesting discussion. The Local Government Commission's invitation to everyone to submit alternative options does open a door. And you've talked about a review of the super city in after 9 years. It may be needed earlier than that. In the private sector, I understand when big corporates merge, after about 5 years, there is an independent post-merger audit to see how it's working out. And obviously, it would be timely soon for something like that to happen with this council. Without belabouring the discussion, I have some sympathy for Councillor Wood's approach. I think we have to agree that Rodney Hyde's baby was not perfect at birth, and it's still not perfect now, and I can't see any logic in people being absolutely defensive about it. We never made it. It was imposed on Auckland without the assent of the people of Auckland, and sooner rather than later, I think it is timely for a review. And I suspect that the Local Government Commission's invitation will actually be opening the door, whether they like it or not, for people to come up with alternative ideas for how the Auckland region is governed. Thank you.
Well, I suspect that's right, and so we'll have 1.6 million new ideas about how we should be governed. Auckland, in its classic way, will respond. You give us the chance, and we will absolutely disagree with each other.
I asked you not to be defensive about Rodney's baby.
Oh, well.
I wasn't being defensive.
Rodney's baby. I don't know. I've helped raise the darn thing. Okay, so I'm the boss of Dad. Penny?
Just very briefly, Mr Chairman, the reason for C is that I have actually been phoned by some ratepayers groups outside the NAG area
Yep.
who have been contacted by the Local Government Commission
Oh, yeah.
to find out what they actually thought of the process, and they actually didn't really know what was going on. So that's really why
Yeah, I'll get
I'm
that.
giving that to the Chief Executive.
Yeah, look, I mean, clearly it's, and on the basis that the Local Government Commission, after due consideration, felt there was something really to answer to, then obviously it'll become a lot more intense up in and around the Rodney area,
Did
and
try
people will
mediation.
absolutely get their view.
They did try mediation, the
Yep.
council needs to know, but there wasn't anything,
Well, they
They
couldn't
couldn't-
mediate
they
it,
couldn't
councillor Penny,
mediate.
because the High Court basically cut that off.
yes, I know, but there wasn't,
Yeah.
anyway,
So despite the best intentions.
thank you.
Right, Phil, you all right?
Yeah, I was just going to inform or remind that this review work is on the agenda for the governing body local board session this
Savo.
afternoon.
That'd be good. Oh, we can raise a
Excellent.
few issues there. Councillor George, you can give them the benefit of your considerable wisdom in this matter. Right, I'll move those recommendations. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
I'm seconding. Against? Vote. Thank you. Right, IMSB, item 13, proposed funding agreement 216-217. We have got Phil again and Alistair. And Rita. Rita, welcome. Various recommendations there. It brings to a conclusion the discussions led by our right. We have got Phil. Which one of you two are going to open this up? Phil, or Alistair, or Rita?
We'll get Rita to...
Rita, away you go. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. Through the chair, I think this is fairly straightforward. It's the annual budget for the...
Best wishes and good luck. It's a good start
Thank
so
you.
far. This is the first time you've presented. You've sat normally up this side of
Yes,
the table.
that's true, but
now
to-
you're out there.
To the governing body, Your
I'm
Worship.
sure this is a promotion.
Shall see after this. Fine.
Go Rita, yeah.
All right, so yes, it's fairly straightforward. It's the proposed budget for the funding agreement with the IMSB. The same as in previous years, the political working party established by this governing body considered the proposal and their recommendations are outlined for you. There isn't a large difference from previous year. It's a fairly straightforward proposal with an increase that has been recommended through the LTP, so it's within that budget. And we're happy to answer any questions. Everything else is in the report. I don't know if Phil wants to add something or some of the working party members might have some commentary on that as well.
Yep, I'm going to lead that off. Phil, is there anything you've got to say, or Alistair?
No, we'll pick it up in questions.
Right, Councillor Penn, yourself as the chair, and then we've got Councillor Bill, Councillor Ross, and Chris, who's away. So, Penn, as chair, anything? No, right. Either of the three? No? Okay. All right, Councillor Chris? D.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So look, I just asked a question of the staff last night, and thank you for responding this morning, Rita and Alistair. And I've just checked off this morning, and I think it is agreeable that, but I don't want to put words in the staff mouths, that the budget identify clearly so that the total direct funding as referred to in A be adjusted by the amount of the shared and support services. And I've received an email, and maybe the staff have that matrix, which is courtesy of you, Rita, which shows an extra 397,749, which would take the total direct funding to 3,295,749, which I'm saying should be identified in the budget. So maybe just some feedback on that. Maybe I don't need to move it as an amendment. Maybe it's just adjusted, but I'll just hear from the staff.
Right, Councillor Phil?
Well, Your Worship, I'm very comfortable making it explicit in here.
Right, very good. Councillor Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is, I certainly want to
acknowledge the working party where this has landed, particularly to note that the overall increase in direct OPEX funding is 2.42%, sitting alongside, if not slightly under, the overall rates increase. I suppose my only question was just to flesh out just an explanation, and someone on the working party, it's not a big dollar amount, but just as to what activity was anticipated with a 50% increase in research, management and monitoring of Maori Plan outcomes. And secondly, I suppose the process of it all, I'm just interested to know why this has come after us having the annual plan debate in finance and then governing body on Friday the 13th, and why it wasn't part of that earlier in the month.
Right. Right. Phil, you?
The simple answer to that question, Your Worship, is that it would have otherwise required 2 reports when we felt one would suffice.
Okay. Anything else?
And the second was just that category, research management and Māori Plan.
Research issue?
Your Worship, I'm actually not able to comment on the detail of that particular body of work represented in the
Can
funding
someone come
agreement.
back to Councillor on that issue, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Really, someone should be here. Rena, are you? Brandy should be here.
Yes, no, Councillor, we have received some commentary around the proposed work program, but we don't have the details on that work. My understanding is that there is some work that the IMSV want to conduct on the Māori Plan, and there will be an independent strategy panel that will be conducting that piece of work, but we can certainly try to find out more details.
Can you, for future reference, I know it's late in the play, but just please make sure that when these reports come through, either within the annual plan round, LTP, or in a separate GB like this, that Brandy or someone representing the IMSB is here. Very important. Councillor Cam, the officers were undertake to get you a more detailed answer to that question.
That's fine. I suspect it's part of a 3-year review of the Maori Plan.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Right. Now, Councillor Linda.
Thank you. Thanks. I mean, I'm pretty disappointed that there's nobody here. The CEO of the IMSB is not here. I mean, I think that's a courtesy, and I'm a bit disappointed because there are questions. I wanted to know, I mean, we've got bald figures here, but with council, everybody knows how many staff there are, everybody knows how much everybody gets paid. It's completely out in the open, and I think that it would go a long way for the public to know. Like, I'm looking on their website, so I'm counting. I think there's 12 or 13 staff, there's 9 representatives. You know, I think, you know, a little bit of fleshing out for the public. This is a public document, so people understand where their nearly $3 million a year goes. Some of it's indirect, some of it is our council staff time and money. So I do think that would have been good to have in the report, just to say, look, this is what it is funding, because people want to know where their money goes. And for us, we've got documents, you know, line by line budgets of where everything goes. And it is public money, so would have been much happier to have that in here.
Linda, I think that's an excellent suggestion and advisory. So, Rena, can you please pass that on to the team? Particularly given the fact that they're a designated part of council. The independence is legislative only. The money that's paid for them comes directly from rates, and they need to respond to that exactly the same as the Museum Board does, MOTAT does, anyone else. All parts of the organisation have to show that same level of transparency. So it's a very good piece of advice to be passed on, and I have got Councillor Bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Councillor John Watson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the remuneration component of of that budget, I see that the independent reviewer recommend that the IMSB members' remuneration 68% of elected. That's a councillor's, which so roughly that'll be about $70,000 a year then. I guess just the question I ask, and it kind of relates to the previous item, is the degree of comparability, say, between the workload or meetings attended of an IMSB person and local board members who are, when you scan through their payments across the boards, are sitting in around about 39 or 40 if they're lucky. So looking at that in terms of that transparency of payment, that seems to be a little bit of an anomaly to me, where they're almost getting paid double what quite a number of local board representatives are, and just in terms of work output or attendance or any other way you like to measure it. Phil, do you have any comment on that?
Well, just through the chair, just to note that there is a bit of science behind this. There is a regular piece of work commissioned with a company called Strategic Pay to do this, and so the Working Party had before it advice from this independent group as to the size of those jobs and what the commensurate remuneration would be. That's what that is based on. So it is based on an objective assessment of the quantum of work, the level at which they're operating and such like.
Okay, so who's providing that information to that?
It's provided both to us and to the IMSB by a company called Strategic Pay, who are very prominent in the local government sector.
Yep. And NGOs.
Strategic means big.
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor John, we had a quarterly meeting the other day, and only half the councillors were present. And at that meeting, in those meetings, there is an opportunity to actually raise these issues. It's a one-on-one, and that's the perfect place. Secondly, I would encourage you to go down to the IMSB and meet with David.
Down on the waterfront?
Yeah, go and see them and talk about those issues. And then thirdly, Phil, that those comparators, I think that's very useful. I know how much work they're doing, and I know how involved they are now. We don't see a lot of that because they actually are required to carry out their own work around their own agenda, and they got to do a fair amount of travelling. They've got 19 iwi to deal with around Auckland, so they are busy. So I can understand the comparative from my experience, but I think for your benefit, there's 2 or 3 options there to, one, either raise the issue if you have a concern, or secondly, to actually just go and discuss it.
Yeah, well, I'll say if we're talking about people being busy and travelling a lot, I think you'd find a lot of local board members are equally busy, if not more, from my experience. Yep. That doesn't seem to be reflected in the pay analysis.
Okay, so I've given you a bit of a lead there, Councillor John, in terms of what might be possible. What I will say to you is the IMSB will be there for a very long time, and so the issue of coming to understand and work through a good, strong and positive relationship going forward will be very much part and parcel of all the obligations of those sitting around this chamber for the next X number of generations. Right, Councillor Bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not so much of a question, but a series of statements, and is that this ongoing refinement of the IMSB budget started with this term and looking at what we paid for internally compared to what the IMSB's budget allowed for, and we've made it more accurate, and we've had better definitions. Some of that has been required by the Auditor General. So the IMSB accounts get our internal audit and also done by the Auditor General. It's the same processes to make sure there is fairness and accountability. What you're seeing here, and Councillor Darby alluded to it, is the amounts that we give in kind as services, because that's the most effective way to do it, the most cost-effective way to keep things in-house. And the budget, I'm sure, will continue to be refined as we progress further forward.
Well done, Bill. Good job there. And Councillor Wayne?
Sure. Just on the subject of comparators, comparators. I note that there's about, I think it was 366,000 in rent. It's about $1,000 a day. Are there any comparators around that with what we're paying for our rent internally, irrespective of whether it's a building we own or not?
Through the chair, I mean, yes, there will be. Obviously, it's quite possible to identify commercial floor space costs. Do I have it here now? No.
But you could usefully provide that. Right, Councillor Chris?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just working some things through with the staff here. I think I need to amend the D, which has now been incorporated, and that should read total funding. Sorry, the word direct has just been taken out. Thank you, Jamie. So what that means, what that refers to, just to make it clear, is the total funding, but not the total budget, is approaching 3.3. The budget is what is supplied.
Yeah.
The shared services we pay direct. And thanks, Councillor Bill, for referring to the Audit Office requirements that are satisfied. And then going forward from here, I think there's some other costs that we probably do need to be aware of. So the shared services are now accounted for in the total funding, but I think we do need to take account of the in-kind services, which currently aren't quantified, so that we actually get a very real total funding for the IMSB. And look, small reminder, this is us responding to statute. This is a significant amount of money, but it's out of OPEX, and that impacts you know, the ratepayer base, and that's approximately, you know, 0.2%. It's on a per annum basis, so it's quite significant, and we should be interrogating it this way. But I'll be supporting it, subject to those changes which I think have now been incorporated.
Right. Councillors, it's been moved and seconded?
No.
Division?
Don't have a move and a second yet.
Right. Yep.
You've got the highest number of Māori in your 25%.
Do you have a second, Mr Mayor?
Yep. Councillor
Darby?
Councillor Darby, you having a second?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, item 13 by division, councillors, including the incorporated D. Your Worship.
Aye.
Councillor Renai.
Aye.
Councillor Brewer.
Aye.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor Cashmore.
Aye.
Councillor Clow.
Yes.
Councillor Cooper.
Aye.
Councillor Darby.
Yes.
Councillor Philippina.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Hulse. Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Penrose.
Yes.
Councillor Quacks.
Yes.
Councillor Sir John Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Wayne Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Webster.
Yes.
Councillor Wood.
No.
Carry 14-4.
Right, thank you. Right, now we move on to item, thank you very much, and you'll follow up with those various issues raised, please, Phil. Item, I think we're going into confidential. Right, I'll move that we proceed to confidential. I'll move that. Second, please.
Yes.
Councillor Bill, for all of the reasons set out in there. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Right, we'll take a 5-minute break. Pit stop.